All right, thank you all for joining us for the Citation Manager Showdown workshop. Joining us today are Priscilla Finley, Humanities Librarian in UNLV Libraries, and Sue Wainscock, Engineering Librarian in the UNLV Libraries. They will be presenting on the benefits of using a citation manager, identifying the strengths and weaknesses of programs such as RefWorks, Zotero, and Menly, and be introduced to friendly folks who can answer questions and troubleshoot. So Priscilla or Sue, whichever would like to go and start, it's all y'all.
Go ahead, Priscilla.
All right, well, thank you so much. You made a good call in being here today. All three of these software platforms are really great tools for building a personal library of papers that are important to you or sources for your writing, and for creating citations and bibliographies. So I will be keeping an eye on the chat box, and I will be relaying questions as needed, or Sue will when we switch. Sue, do you want to hit the next? So my name is Priscilla Finley. I'm the Humanities Librarian, and I will be showing you Zotero today.
And I'm Sue Wainscott, and I'll be showing you RefWorks and then Mendeley. We're taking them a little out of order.
So in the registration email, or in pre-workshop information that you received, you should have found a link to a companion website that I'm pasting into the chat right now. I hope that's the right site. That looks like the wrong URL.
Test it.
Thank you. So the companion website has 3 colored tabs with the name of each program. Each tab features a 5-minute video where we walk through the same process, so you can compare head to head what it looks like to save your papers in your library, to add a reference in a paper that you are writing. In today's presentation, each panelist is going to take 10 minutes to make our case for the strengths or benefits of each platform, and then we will take your questions from the chat box. I do have a quick note about questions. Oh, can you
advance it?
Advance it, thank you. I'm advancing it on my own screen, but nothing's happening on yours. So after all 3 presentations, we'll create some optional breakout rooms where you can ask, or we'll, if depending on logistics here, we'll give you an opportunity, if time permits, where you can ask more detailed questions, or you're certainly welcome to follow up with either Sue or myself to talk about your particular situation. For the workshop chat today, broad general questions are great, and we would love to be able to help you compare these software programs head to head. If you have a real detailed in the weeds question that's very specific to one of the platforms, that's the kind of thing that maybe we can handle either in a breakout room or via email afterwards, just to keep everything moving along. So with that, welcome to the showdown.
Right on. So I'm Sue Wainscott. I'm the librarian assigned to the College of Engineering, which includes computer science. So naturally, I enjoy playing with lots of tools. So I'll be presenting 2 of these tools today. The first one of which is RefWorks, which is owned by Ex Libris ProQuest. And one of the things to note is that we're kind of going over some of the uniquenesses about these 3. Hopefully you've had a chance to review 1 or more of the videos online and notice that all of them are good at collecting information about different information sources. Organizing is something that you can do by grouping them into folders and putting tags on things. And then also you can often add attachments and take notes in one shape or another. And then of course, generate citations. As you're writing your own manuscripts, you can insert little links out to generate citations and style them appropriately for different venues. So with RefWorks, let's see. RefWorks is really nice if you are comfortable with something that doesn't require you to download software to a local machine. It's all web-based, all in the cloud. The storage limit for RefWorks is 100 megabytes, which, given that it is by default going to want to store mostly the data about an information source rather than the file, 100 megabytes is usually enough for folks. You can add some attachments, but it's primarily designed to store lots of citations, essentially. It is quite good at articles and books, and it is a really good choice if your type of literature searching and your style, your workflow involves grabbing lots of things from a search and then dealing with them and analyzing them and looking at them later is your style. It's very good at getting lots of things downloaded in a chunk at one time. In fact, it is fully integrated into the library website's quick search, which is that main search box at the top of the library webpage, which I highly recommend that you bookmark, or Google Library UNLV, and you'll find it. It has a direct search within the PubMed database, which is great for folks in the life sciences. And the library quick search integration is such that when you run a search in our website platform, and you get back information resources from our collection, you can select the ones that you like and then import them with a single click, and it will open up your RefWorks, and then it will begin to import that data. Let's see, I've got too many things covered up here. It's also possible to drag and drop a copy of a PDF into RefWorks. Again, you do only, and I'm admitting people when they enter the room, Josh, I hope that's okay. I don't know if you can see it since I've taken control. It's really good at gathering the information. So you can drag and drop a PDF onto your RefWorks screen once you've logged in, and it will grab the citation data from it. And then if it has any kind of a unique identifier, like a DOI, digital object identifier, or one of the numbers that are associated with books like ISSNs, or the title, it will do a nice job of looking that information up online and grabbing potential good citation data. In addition, one of the things that's unique to RefWorks is that in addition to being able to organize things into digital folders and adding those kind of descriptive tags, you can also have essentially separate accounts within your RefWorks accounts. They're called projects, and they're like having separate libraries with folders within each of them, so which is kind of interesting. It might be useful if you have a need to do this for a work project and you just want to keep it separate from the what you're doing for your thesis dissertation or some other passion project that you may have where you want to collect all the manga on, you know, desert wildflowers. I'm looking at a poster over here. I made that up. So it's possible to have another layer of organization and kind of keep your information separated. I don't have a personal use case for that, but it might be useful to you. And it does have really robust multiple views within the interface that might be useful for you. I found that folks tend to choose these based upon really liking the user interface on one of them versus the others. So this may really appeal to some of you. If so, you may want to check out RefWorks. And another thing that RefWorks is really good at, which is kind of helpful when you think that it's great at bringing in lots and lots of things at one time from your various searches, it has a really good deduplication feature where it identifies things that are more or less similar compared to when comparing all of the data that's been entered for each of them. So if you do a really robust search in PubMed and bring in 1,000 things, and then you go out and let's say you start grabbing things from Google Scholar, and then you get some things recommended to you in the Web of Science database, you can grab them all. And then you can run this deduplication feature and have pretty good confidence that it's going to highlight the things that are very likely to be the same item. And then clean up your data, which is highly recommended before you start using citations, because it will treat, for instance, all three of these roll-ins, it will treat as separate items, even though they are likely the same thing. So deduplication is a nice data cleaning thing you ought to do with your citations as you're organizing them, especially if you're the kind of person who just grabs all the things in baskets and throws them together in your library, and then that data cleaning step can be really important. Back to Priscilla.
Thanks. So I'm here to advocate for Zotero. Zotero is, I've used all three of these bibliography managers that we're looking at today. And for my research, Zotero works the best. Many of my sources as a humanities person are books or websites or historical primary sources that aren't necessarily traditional PDFs of journal articles. And I also need a system that lets me store related files like screenshots, PDFs, and notes and photos that I take in an archive. The trade-off is that I choose to pay a little bit for extra storage. The sources I use are widely varied, and Zotero handles lots of kinds of sources. It's able to identify whether it's a book or a book chapter in most cases, depending on where it's coming from. It also gives me flexibility in how I collect those. So if I download a PDF of a chapter, I can attach that to my citation and have that ready to read when I'm ready to use it. When I add them to my library, Zotero usually recognizes things that are not journal articles, and they fill in the appropriate fields that are needed for my preferred citation style. Zotero was designed specifically by researchers in the humanities. The competitors are designed and maintained by information vendors who optimize access to the kind of information that they provide and that they resell. Zotero was grant funded. There were committees of historians and literature scholars and philosophers who talked about what they needed a citation manager to do as it was being developed. So one thing that I can do in Zotero that I can't do as well with the other two citation managers is work with physical books. If I have a physical book sitting on my desk, I can use a barcode scanner and scan that directly to my Zotero account. Another thing Zotero does when working with journal articles is that it keeps track of journal articles that have been retracted. If there's a service called Retraction Watch, it's a database. It is run by information professionals. When a journal retracts an article that they have published, they send out a little notification explaining why the article was retracted and the date that it was retracted and what the consideration was that caused the publisher to do that. So when an article is retracted, my Zotero account will recognize that. It gets the update from the Retraction Watch database and will flag that in my library with a link to the explanation. I also subscribe to some saved searches or current awareness alerts that let me know, for example, when a new issue of a journal that I pay attention to comes out. And I can review those in my Zotero account and easily slot the citations from those newly published articles into my collection of things that I'm going to write about. So I have a saved search that shows me when new articles mentioning Las Vegas come out in history journals. It shows me a feed with the title and the link to each article, and then I can easily add it to my library, or I can go read it and decide if it's something that I want to add to my Zotero library or not. Next slide, please, Sue. Thank you. I like to take notes and keep them with my sources. So Zotero lets me attach multiple files to each citation item in my library. I can add plain text files, I can add photos, I can add screenshots or whatever I need. Because it's so easy to save items to my library, sometimes I'll snag an article from online and then forget why I saved it. That's why I love that Zotero has a feature that lets me highlight some text and add that as a note that's attached to the item at the same time as I add it to my library, so I can remind myself why I saved this in the first place. Zotero allows me to rename PDF files. So if I search my computer because I want to email a colleague an article that I have saved, it has a meaningful name and not like a 7-digit number like you might get from downloading articles from JSTOR. I can read articles from my Zotero collection on my iPad. I can annotate the document with a pencil or with the, I don't know if that's visible on the screen or not, with a text annotations. And I can also have all of my annotations pulled out into a text file so that when I'm writing, I can copy and paste in the passages that I highlighted, for example, and it will paste them in with the citation data right at the end of it. So it never gets lost that I'm making a direct quotation from an article in Zotero. One last note-taking feature is that Zotero will capture a screenshot of any web page when you collect a citation from it. So, for example, with online newspaper articles, it's not unusual for an online newspaper to update an article as new information becomes available. The snapshot is going to document exactly what was published at the time that I viewed the page. So it keeps a copy of the information that was on my screen, as well as saving me the URL so that I can link to the current version of the article. So Zotero has a cloud option available. Your use of the cloud in Zotero is optional. If privacy is important in your project, It is entirely possible to run Zotero without connecting to the cloud, and you can store everything in a secure location that you control. I like the convenience of syncing my articles to my iPad and to my laptop, so I choose to pay a little bit extra to use their cloud storage. You probably already know someone who uses Zotero, and if you don't, my contact information is on the library website. Last time I had a question, I posted on their help forum and a developer got back to me within 2 hours and we fixed the problem. So here's my final pitch, and if you could switch to the final slide, thank you. As they say on the internet, if you're not paying for it, you are the product. Zotero is a non-commercial, grant-funded academic project that was designed to serve the academic community. Most of its competitors are owned by for-profit information vendors who may have an interest in doing things with the data that they collect from user. I'm not saying that they're spying on you, just that there must be something in it for them to provide the platform at no charge to you. So if you cite books and other non-PDF sources regularly, or if you like the idea of filing notes alongside articles, or if you need to be notified of retracted papers, Zotero is a good option for you. Thank you, Sue.
Thank you, Priscilla. You make a strong case. I actually use all three of these in an odd way. But before we get into that and questions, why I choose to use Mendeley.com. As Priscilla noted, Mendeley is owned currently by the Elsevier Corporation, which is growing constantly by acquiring other publishers and other information vendors. So Mendeley started by a couple of graduate students who needed to solve a problem. For whatever reason, they didn't choose Zotero. They chose to create another product. And it started out very focused on journal articles because they were engineering students, and that's the primary source of information that they were interested in cataloging, basically, and organizing. It's since been acquired by the Elsevier Corporation, and it's undergone a lot of changes in the past, 5 years? It seems really short. But Mendeley is useful, and a lot of folks on campus use it, and that's why the library subscribes, to get you a little bit more data. So the reason that I've advocated for us to support the Mendeley accounts, and the reason that I continue to teach about Mendeley is because it has some really nice collaboration features. Within Mendeley, if you have an account, whether through your institution, whether you pay out of pocket by yourself, or whether you just have the free account with limited storage, you can still share those document citation data and the attached files within groups. Group members can be anyone with a Mendeley account of any type. This is really generous. It's an interpretation of copyright law by the provider of the Mendeley product, that this sharing within your individual password protected, small group is within the bounds of copyright that they're comfortable supporting. So at the moment, and still, this is a really nice way to collaborate with your colleagues from different institutions and even in industry, or folks who are in between affiliations. So that's really handy. And within those groups, all of the group members are able to add, edit, and collaboratively annotate the PDF files that are attached. You can add and download the attached files. And this allows your co-authors and your research team to see how the collaborative literature search is progressing. You can also, as of last year, use the citations and data within a Mendeley group in order to generate citations within your writing projects. I will note that it is limited to use of Microsoft Word. It is not useful with Google Docs. So if you have a group that's collaborating and using Google Docs, one of you will be in charge of adding the citation tags later on. They haven't made it compatible yet. So taking notes is something that they've been adding progressively more features to Mendeley. Right now, there's like a sidecar kind of a dealio called a notebook, where you can type your own notes. As you can see on the bottom half on the right side, bottom right corner, there's some notes that I just kind of put on the page while I was playing around with notebooks to figure them out. But you can also highlight text within one of your attached PDF files, like the journal article copy, and then it will drop it in. You can drop it into a notebook and it appears as a quotation. So what I like about this is that it helps us avoid plagiarizing, because it's very clear what's a direct quote And then the things below it beyond the style and lack of punctuation and capitalization, clearly those are my notes. So this is one tool that can help you build that paraphrasing muscle, as it were. You would have to continue to note in your own words where your ideas are coming from, perhaps. But it's another tool to help you be even more clean in that way in your paraphrasing and note taking. Something else is that Mendeley is both in the cloud and it has an offline option. It has software that you can download on a computer. You don't need to. You can do a lot of things only in the cloud and with a plugin to Microsoft Word. But you can also choose to work offline. You just have to manually be sure to hit a little synchronize icon so that you're connecting what you have on your local machine to the cloud before you start working in the other. Although it's a little bit better about doing that automatically now. It used to be that you absolutely had to push a button. As I recall now, the desktop version is a little bit better about helping pull the data rather than relying on you to push the data. But it's still good to double check before you shut down. The citation tool that comes with Mendeley to work in Microsoft Word is compatible with you using different computers. So you can get it loaded into the Microsoft Word on whatever computer you're using. I believe a lot of the computers on campus in the computer labs may come with the Cite tool already installed. I know the RefWorks Cite tool is already installed, and that's something you shouldn't have to add. This is something that you can add on very easily, and both the library system folks and the librarians like me, and then also I believe OIT are able to help with that if ever you get into a computer lab and it's not immediately available. Some of the other features, I mentioned in the beginning that the library uses part of our budget to subscribe to a larger edition of Mendeley, and all of us get 100 gigabytes personal storage and 100 gigabytes of storage for our groups and like 1,000 different groups that we can have. So I hoard PDF copies. I have a lot of things from 10 years of being here, and I just drop PDFs in there, and that's where I store copies of articles. I've used maybe a gig. So it's nice if you want to use your citation manager as a file copy storage device for journal articles, book chapters, things that you've scanned, etc. If you've got an entire copy of an ebook in PDF format, you can drag it in there. And there are also occasionally different types of features that they have, such as a data set finding kind of a tool. And then they've on and off put some effort into a career tab where they're trying to be like Indeed.com for academia, where they're helping you identify different postdoc roles and fellowships and faculty jobs and research and development jobs. So that's something that you may want to check out. And then I think I've kind of alluded to this. It's an ever-changing software tool. It's kind of agile in the way that they roll things out, in that I don't often think they were ready for rollout, frankly. That's why I have this little caution sign. They currently have something called a duplicates feature, which is not something that I would use yet, but they're getting there. So if you have a work style that requires a lot of deduplication in a nice, clean way to manage your citations, then I would not currently recommend their duplication feature. So I believe that's the end of our slideshow. Yes, Priscilla? Excellent. Let me stop sharing. Were there any questions that showed up in the chat box for us?
Not as yet, but now would be a great time to type them.
Yeah. Or let us know if you use one of these products and you want to shout out your favorite.
Yeah, there are some other competitors out there, so I'll be interested to hear if there are folks who are loyal to a different platform.
Oh, you've got a question about Zotero.
So Zotero, if you load Zotero on, if you only use one computer and you keep your Zotero library just on your hard drive, your storage limit is whatever the limit of space you will allocate to on your hard drive. If you are syncing your Zotero library to the cloud, there is a free 300 megabyte allowance that every user has for your account. You can pay for increments of, I think, 20 GB, 60 GB, and then unlimited. And they cost about $20 a year for the 20 level, 60 a year for the 60 level, and I think 120 for the unlimited cloud storage option.
And I see a question in the chat about how to connect RefWorks to Google Docs, and I'm going to need to look that up. And hopefully I'll find you an online article that I can add into the chat box. But let me look for that.
There is an add-in. I just, because I made the video for the site, I had to do it myself last week. There is an add-in in the Microsoft Store. If you go to the Microsoft Store and type in RefWorks, there's not a charge. You don't have to pay for it. You just have to use your Microsoft account to download the add-in, and then it will integrate in the References tab on your Microsoft Word. Oh, I'm sorry, you said Google Docs. There is a Google Docs integration with RefWorks, but I don't remember where to find it.
Oh, okay.
So Sue will send us a good article.
I had someone ask me if we could have access to the presentation that you used today.
Yeah, since I stabilized it on Sunday. Yeah, you can now. I was making those last minute edits one makes typically in the conference room before your presentation. So
Sue, I think there is a version on the guide, so maybe you can post them there and post the new set there.
That's a great idea. Let's see. This is a terrible link that I'm putting it into the chat, but it is the RefWorks for Google Docs link directly from the RefWorks people. So if you go to that, you'll see the Ex Libris Knowledge Center logo, which is, I don't know who owns who at this point, Clarivate, Ex Libris, ProQuest.
So Evelyn had a question. Can I migrate my library from Mendeley to Zotero or between any of the citation apps you shared? I think I would say yes, but I want to qualify that, and maybe Sue, if you've done any Mendeley importing or exporting, you can add to this. When I export from Zotero, it exports the citation data, but it doesn't export my saved PDFs or my notes. So it depends on sort of how heavily invested you are in the materials that you've added alongside the citation data. Moving citation data between these is super easy. It's all, there's a reference interchange format that you can save everything as and just export from one and import into the other. Sue, does that track for Mendeley as well?
Yeah. So the attached files, especially in Mendeley where you can add more than one, the default is to not export them because that's huge. It would be an enormous zip file even for my library. The other thing is, at least in Mendeley, and I haven't tried this in RefWorks or either of the others, when you download, when you export attached files with annotations that you've made in the citation tool, the default is not to share those. So in Mendeley, for instance, you can have your personal library, and then you can have those groups, right, where you're doing collaborative annotations. Mendeley's default when you move something from your personal library that you've already annotated and then share it with the group is to protect your notes and not move those, and it moves an empty or a clean PDF. And I like to think of that as protecting myself from me, because my notes are occasionally very frank and show my confusion and frustration, sometimes with the author's choices, which I try not to be a reviewer too, but when I'm annotating a journal article, I let it fly. So the default is to not share your personal annotations with your group. So it's something to think about when you are moving your own materials from one to the other, is to really check those default settings and see how to work around them. And that's something that I'm very happy to help people puzzle through and come up with a workflow. Great questions, y'all. Any more?
I have a question. Do you think you could walk us through maybe using Zotero on using the actual reference? like from article, like the whole process?
Yeah, actually, if you head to the videos on the site that we shared,
Oh, okay, it's already
there
there.
are 5-minute videos that you can watch that will do that exact process for each of the three options.
Oh, okay.
All right, is there any other questions? Feel free to unmute your mics during this time too if you have a question.
Hey, hi, Josh. It's me, Cece.
Hi.
Hi. So anyway, I wonder if these presentations will be available on Web Campus, and including the first one that was before you.
Yeah, we can definitely see. Yes, they will be. Yes.
Oh, great. Because I had to leave the Zoom for a while because I was not seeing the presentation slides, and I had to relog. And that sounds great. And thank you so much, Sue and Priscilla. You girls are great. I'm a big fan, and I love Mendeley. Okay.
Shout out for Mendeley. Excellent. Ooh, let's repost that the guide in the, there we go. The videos should be on the main tab for that, and verify for us that you can see that, because we both have edit access to guides like this, so it's possible that we can see it and you all can't, and we want to be sure you're able to view that guide if there's somebody who's able to open it up and verify that. Sometimes our password keepers get the better of us. So the comparison videos are located on each of the 3 tabs behind. You see them. Okay, great. So here, let me share my screen real quick, since we have time for a quick tour. Not that one. I have too many tabs open. This is really impressive. That one. So when you go to that guide, what you see first is a comparison table that we probably should verify, but it's been pretty stable recently. Just looking at some of the common things that people think about when they're choosing a citation manager. And then we have a tab for each of the 3 that we support, which are Mendeley and then RefWorks and Zotero. And what you'll see on each of them is quick introduction. Because Mendeley kind of did a huge revamp, we have 2 videos. Some of your faculty colleagues and some of you who are longtime users of Mendeley may be using the legacy system, which was called Desktop very creatively. But most of us are now using the newer reference manager, equally creatively named software version. And then there's the RefWorks demo and the Zotero demo. And then some other things that might be helpful. So I highly recommend checking these out as you're considering which one to use. And then I'll just make a plug for any of you who have a really great system that doesn't involve one of these tools and it's working for you. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. I know people who use long lists in Microsoft Word and they're extremely accomplished publishing, machines. So if your system works for you, keep it.
All right, is there any final questions? All right. Well, thank y'all so much for sharing your time with us today and providing us with such helpful advice and tips. And thank you to all of our participants for joining us today.